Hello, future leaders and lifelong learners. Are you ready to dive into the heart of Walsh University and the ever-evolving world of higher education? I'm Teresa Fox, and you're tuned in to Cav Chats. We're not just talking, we're connecting you to the pulse of our campus and the headlines shaping universities everywhere. Think of Cav Chats as your backstage pass to the stories, debates, and innovations that matter to you most, right here at Walsh University and beyond. So whether you're a student, faculty, coach, administrator, or just passionate about higher ed, buckle up. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cav Chats. I'm delighted today. We are going to be talking about something that I think everyone will find interesting, and many of us can't live without. I know I can't, and that is coffee. I'm delighted to welcome two distinguished professors from our exercise science department in our College of Health Sciences, Drs. Jonathan Naylor and Meredith Joplin. Welcome. And they recently contributed to a book called The Link Between Coffee and Health. And in particular, their focus was on how coffee impacts human performance. So welcome, Drs. Naylor and Joplin. I'm just delighted to have you. And I wanted to just start by telling you a little bit about our professors here. Dr. Jonathan Naylor is an associate professor of exercise science here at Walsh University. He earned his PhD in exercise physiology from Kent State University, where his dissertation examined physical activity behaviors among children and their parents. Previously, Dr. Naylor served as the clinical exercise physiologist, specializing in cardiac rehabilitation at the Cleveland Clinic. And Dr. Meredith Joplin is an assistant professor of exercise science. She earned her PhD in exercise physiology from Kent State University as well, where her research focused on the effects of caffeine and placebo on heart rate variability and performance in women performing resistance exercise to fatigue. She herself is a former intercollegiate athlete. She was a Division I volleyball athlete and later a coach, which helped shape her passion for sports performance and applied exercise physiology. So I'm really excited to talk about your chapter that you contributed to this very interesting book today. Let's kick things off with you, Meredith. What inspired you to explore the relationship between coffee and health, particularly its effects on athletic performance and general physiology?
Yeah, so since coffee is one of the most widely consumed beverages in the world, whether that's coffee or caffeine, it's always used by athletes whether they realize that it's an ergogenic aid or not. Sometimes they just want it because that's what they consume every day for energy. And so we were really approached because a couple of our peers in our department wrote a position stand about coffee and performance. And so this textbook author wanted us to contribute a chapter, and we were happy to do so, especially with our background and how it relates to what we study.
Sure, that's pretty exciting. And really relative here at Walsh because we have over 700 athletes. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of interested students here learning about this as well. John, how did your background in sports nutrition and health shape your approach to this chapter?
So when we were putting it together, I think we each tried to focus on our background area, all of us interested in caffeine and coffee, but how do we tailor that to our background? And mine was specifically coming from a cardiac rehabilitation standpoint. Tried to look at effects on the heart and some of the risk factors for heart disease, things like high blood pressure, abnormal cholesterol, and things of that nature. And then also other issues that can happen with the heart, abnormal heart rhythms and those sorts of things. So I really looked in that area, and then like Meredith with her background, looked more at the performance aspect, muscle function, and that sort of thing. So we tried to lean into our other research interests to then develop it along with coffee. So I think it worked out well, and we each kind of brought it together too to synthesize the chapter as one whole product too. So.
Now, John, coffee contains hundreds of bioactive compounds beyond caffeine. Which, in your view, are the most interesting or underrated in terms of health impact?
Yeah. So that's what really makes coffee so much different than some of the energy drinks or that you can get is all of these antioxidants that are within coffee. One real interesting one is it's called chlorogenic acid. So in looking at heart function, for example, it really helps with limiting arrhythmia risk, so abnormal heart rhythms. It can limit or improve vascular function, so it helps with blood flow, helps reduce the risk for hypertension, so development of high blood pressure. It's a really interesting compound, and we often think of, and that's one of the interesting things, think of coffee as a negative or caffeine as a negative, but when you ingest it as coffee, it can actually have kind of a positive effect in a lot of aspects. And I think chlorogenic acid, as I was diving into it, is really, it touches on a lot of areas, and it's just a really interesting component.
Well, I, for one, am very delighted to hear that assessment.
Yeah.
I know, I'm sure a lot of people are. So, John, how do factors such as bean type, roast, grind, brewing method, how do they alter the effects of coffee?
Yeah. And even as we look at how people ingest coffee throughout the world, I remember when I was working in cardiac rehabilitation, we had a lot of patients from the Middle East, and the type of coffee that they brought me, I was really interested to try. It was nothing like coffee I had had in the United States. And when you think about the different methods, that was more like a boiled coffee and a bean that's very little roast. And the ways that we usually ingest it, obviously, some sort of roast type, whether it's light, medium, or dark roast, and some sort of filtered or ground coffee. So there are so many different effects, and when you just say coffee, obviously that doesn't tell the whole story. So it really comes down to different compounds that are roasted out, it seems, throughout the roasting process, but then actually some that are, and for lack of a better term, roasted out of the bean. At that point, other compounds start to develop. So, for example, chlorogenic acid tends to be more available in light roast, whereas then, and I talked about some of the benefits with that, but when it comes to things like high cholesterol, which has been associated with coffee intake, the darker the roast, they actually develop different pigmentations, like melanoidins is what they're called, and they provide kind of a reduced risk of developing high cholesterol. So it's kind of hard. It kind of depends on what. It's a mixed bag. Yeah, it's a mixed bag.
So it's very personalized.
Yeah, and you don't think of it as being that affected. You think of lighter dark roast, what do you prefer? But there are different health benefits. And even the filter method, so filter and grind size. So they talked about this a lot in the research I was looking at related to cholesterol. A more coarsely ground, less ground grind size, along with a paper filter, tended to filter out some of the negative effects with cholesterol. So you can look at so many different components beyond what taste is there, and even what you add to the coffee certainly affects things. Whether you're taking it in with just what's there with black coffee, or are you adding other components that could alter health too. So
that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So how do, well, let's switch over to Meredith for a second. Can you explain the evolution of caffeine status as a doping agent in sport? Yeah. That's such a negative connotation. And how coffee consumption is interpreted differently from caffeine supplements or pills? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so back in the 80s, the International Olympic Committee made it a banned substance. So if you had a certain concentration in your urine above a certain amount, it was considered, you tested positive for too much caffeine. And in that case, then it's considered doping, right? Mm-hmm. When you're consuming too much. And then they determined that that could be a benefit that not everybody gets to have.
So that's beyond just maybe having 3 cups in the morning. That's
right.
Maybe pills or things like that.
So, and they even have like gum. So if you could chew caffeine gum, that will be absorbed within your cheek faster actually that way. So a lot of people would use that as well. Mm-hmm. But so it really just depends on when you consume it, how much you consume, and what type you consume. But nowadays, back in like 2004, around then, mid-2000s, they removed it from the banned substance list, and so now it's just more so considered like a natural ergogenic aid.
Okay.
In most cases, obviously every different governing body might have something different, but most of the main ones, it's no longer on the banned substance list.
Okay,
Yeah.
So what should athletes know about the safe and effective use of coffee as an ergogenic aid?
Yeah, so too much can be too much at times, and I'm sure a lot of people have experienced that when they've had too much caffeine in a day. Oh yeah, the jitters.
The jitters,
for
and you're
sure.
like, oh, I shouldn't have had that last cup.
Because then it can negatively affect your performance, even if you think of then going to try to perform in my example, like a volleyball game. When you're too jittery, you can't really focus on the game. So they usually say about 2 to 4 cups per day. That's about 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram of body mass, if you were to actually calculate that out. But usually if you then perform within an hour of just that amount of coffee, it can have benefits before it then becomes detrimental. So, and usually with the half-life, if, again, you have within that hour, but then usually for about 3 to 5 hours, it can still be beneficial as that kind of gets used up in your system.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Very interesting. That's fascinating. So, John, your chapter notes both controversies and protective effects, as we just talked about, around coffee and cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer. What are the most important takeaways from just regular coffee drinkers?
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit on it there. Regular consumption of coffee tends to be a benefit. Now, that's with a limit too. So
Sure.
There tends to be kind of what we'd say is like a U-shaped relationship to where somewhere in that range of, and it varies based on a lot of the studies, but somewhere between 1 to 5 cups, you see some benefit from bringing in coffee, and even disease risk reduction for a number of things you mentioned there, diabetes, cholesterol, hypertension. You go above and beyond that, 6 cups or more, that positive effect tends to go away. And if you consume less than that, you're not consuming it, so you don't get the benefit. So I would say, the big takeaway is if you're consuming right around that 3 cups per day mark, give or take a little bit, it does provide a benefit for you. Now, again, saying that you're not adding a lot of sugar or a lot of other things to it, to the coffee as well. So however you bring it in has a big effect. But I guess the big takeaway is regular coffee drinkers can get kind of a bad connotation with it because of the caffeine, but it really isn't there, and it hasn't been solidified through the research. Yeah.
And do you think folks should, I feel like we should say always check with your doctor before you drink, go to 5 cups a day.
Yeah, it's not, and that's a good point. If you're not a regular coffee drinker and you start drinking a lot, there are negative effects that can happen, especially acute or like real short-term effects. If we're thinking about things like abnormal heart rhythms, for example, that can certainly develop more in those who aren't habituated to coffee, so they're not drinking it on a regular basis. So no, I don't recommend all of a sudden waking up one day and I'm going to start having 5 cups to build up my tolerance. But those who they've kind of built it into their lifestyle.
Sure.
Yeah, certainly it's a benefit.
Okay,
so.
We don't have to feel as guilty anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's great. Meredith, what do we know about how coffee affects cognitive performance and reaction time? Are these driven by caffeine alone, or are there other compounds that matter just as much?
Yeah, so it again comes back to that U shape. So there is that optimal amount, then it would actually improve reaction time, alertness. It also helps reduce fatigue or slow down how quickly you fatigue during exercise. It is more beneficial with coffee and the things that Dr. Naylor keeps talking about, all those compounds that are in coffee as opposed to just actual caffeine. So it is more beneficial through brewed coffee as opposed to, again, straight caffeine or gum or energy drinks.
Okay.
But
so
it
don't
does
cheat
improve
and get the pills or the gum. Drink old-fashioned
You'll
coffee.
still have some improvements there, but yeah, it's not quite as much because of all the other benefits within coffee.
Okay. Any difference between K-cup or slow roast?
Well, yeah, and that's where you see. I haven't seen a lot on K-cups, and honestly, in our office we have a Keurig, and that's what most of my intake during the day is from. Most of it I've seen is from the filtered method and what kind of filters best and that sort of thing. So that research may be out there, or it's up and coming as those become more prevalent. But there's, again, going back to, there's so many different varieties. You just have to, as long as you're consuming in moderation, you're probably in decent shape.
Okay. All right. So, Meredith, can you share insights on the link between coffee, muscle mass, and sarcopenia?
Yeah, so actually sarcopenia is a reduction in muscle mass as you age, and it's normal for everyone who ages. You can offset that with regular resistance exercise. But coffee, specifically not caffeine, coffee can actually reduce how much muscle mass you lose as you age. So it helps improve muscle cells.
It's just getting better by the minute here.
It has these
I thought I just had to eat a lot of protein.
I know, exactly. There's so many things we can do. So, no, it has all these antioxidant properties, and it helps improve the cellular, like cells at the cellular level. So it does actually reduce sarcopenia as you age.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. There's discussion in your chapter on coffee's influence on fat and glucose metabolism. To what extent is coffee consumption tied to body composition and your metabolism?
So it can help you have higher metabolism. So it can help with energy expenditure, which would mean that then you could potentially burn more fat as opposed to glycogen. It can help with glycogen sparing, which is what we call that. So when you're burning fat as opposed to burning glycogen. There's some mixed research out there these days where it's not showing that it's quite as helpful with that anymore. And it really might come down to the type of coffee and the way it's brewed, like we keep talking about.
I remember there was a whole fad about green bean coffee extract, and that was going to help you lose weight. So not
and
much.
there's a chance, that what's in the green bean coffee specifically. So it's just not going to be this like magic fat burner, but it can help increase metabolism and things like that.
Can support the cause.
Exactly. Yep.
So, how should listeners interpret, Meredith, mixed findings in the literature linking coffee to weight loss or body fat reduction? So what would you suggest?
I guess if like someone is trying to lose weight or lose fat, right, is more so the way we look at it. Coffee could help, like you said, it could support that. It also depends on how you consume it. So I know like all of these coffee shops that are popping up, they have all these fancy coffees with sugars and mochas and things like that.
Caramel.
My favorite way to consume coffee these days. But it's not going to be beneficial because then you're consuming all that sugar. It depends on the type of milk. So the best route to go would be plain black coffee. And then in that way, yes, it can support some, again, fat burning, but it's not going to be the main thing. So it can be a support, and then again, based on what you put in it.
Okay, just watch putting all the good stuff in there.
Yes, exactly. All the fun stuff.
All the fun stuff. So, John, with so many brewing and preparation methods altering the components of coffee, what are the practical implications for someone interested in maximizing their health or performance outcomes via their coffee selection?
Yeah, from what I've seen, if we can kind of meet it in the middle, because there are such, we talked about some of the benefits of dark roast, light roast. Medium roast, may give you that in between. And then it seems that using a paper filter will tend to filter out a lot of some negative compounds that may come, especially related to things like cholesterol, and then drinking coffee, black coffee, right? So we know what else is
Not
going
even
into
stevia?
it.
Stevia okay?
Well, that's a whole other story.
Getting specific here.
Yeah. But even sometimes with what you put in the coffee, it's not a huge amount of what you intake for the day. So if you're not going overboard with what you're putting in there, you're probably okay. But at least from how we typically prepare it, again, in the United States, I think that's your best method. If we can, and I'm kind of a coffee snob from this standpoint. I got to grind my own beans and put them in the...
fresh.
Fresh coffee. So just from a personal standpoint, that's what I would recommend. And that seems to be a good way to do it. And if you are going to grind your beans, don't make it so fine that a lot gets through the filter. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there specific populations, such as athletes, older adults, or people with chronic conditions? I know you've mentioned high cholesterol, who should be especially mindful of how they consume coffee?
Yeah. Interestingly enough, there's limited research on those who have a chronic condition and how it affects it. But I did see some even on high blood pressure, and those, again, who are drinking in moderation and already have been consuming coffee, continuing at that amount hasn't shown to increase their blood pressure levels. That's just one population I saw. But I would recommend anybody who has a chronic condition where coffee could have any negative impact on them, it's probably best to avoid it. And again, like we were kind of joking about earlier, it's not that it's going to protect you once you have a chronic condition, so it's not like you need to start using it like a medicine. Right? And there are certain people who are just more for whatever genetic reason, more susceptible to developing a chronic condition from ingesting something like coffee. So I would say from a practical standpoint, if you're already intaking a certain amount and it doesn't seem to be increasing the levels of whatever your chronic condition is, your glucose levels if you're diabetic, your blood pressure if you have high blood pressure, unless your doctor tells you otherwise, kind of keep it at that moderate level.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Meredith, what questions do you wish researchers could answer next with respect to coffee and caffeine and...
Yeah, so actually we are starting a study here at Walsh now as we speak, where we're going to study how the effects of coffee versus caffeine, so two separate ones. We're going to use caffeine powder in like Crystal Light and then brewed coffee, and seeing how that affects vessel diameter, because if it increases or at least doesn't constrict vessel diameter, then that would lead to more blood flow, and so maybe that additive effect could be an improvement in performance for aerobic athletes and endurance athletes, long distance type athletes. And so not only can the caffeine and improved reaction time and things like that reduce fatigue help, but also the blood flow and things like that. So we're looking to see how that will be affected based on the type of caffeine.
That's really exciting. So can students participate in this research?
Absolutely, yep. We're looking for Walsh University athletes that are in an endurance type sport. So think cross country, long distance track, lacrosse, soccer, things like that. So yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So you heard that, students? Get yourself involved. You know who to contact. So what's the biggest myth or misperception, John, about coffee and health that you would like to dispel with the research that you did?
Yeah, and I think we've been kind of alluding to it all along, that it just, because there's caffeine in coffee, you know, we often have a connotation that anything where you're getting a high level of caffeine is going to have a negative health benefit. But again, in moderation, it can be the best, most safe way to ingest caffeine and still get some of the positive aspects people are trying to get from caffeine, like the neurostimulation to be more alert, some of the performance benefits we talked about. All of those factors make it, I think, one of the, probably the best vessel to ingest caffeine and still reduce other health risks. So. Not that you can't go overboard with it still, but it's the best way to do it. Yeah.
So has the research influenced for either of you how you make coffee, how you prepare it, how you drink it?
I think I'm much more of a coffee drinker than Meredith.
I more so do decaf, so it doesn't.
if anything, it kind of, when I go to have that cup that may take me over the edge of that safe level, I think twice about it.
Okay.
I was always more of a black coffee drinker, so if anything, that kind of solidified how I prepare my coffee. And I would say I use it more now if I get up and I'm going to do a workout in the morning. That's when I have time to work out with 3 kids at home. That's the only time I'm getting it in. And I need a little boost, I'll have a cup of black coffee, and it seems to help me be more alert, get more out of my workout from that standpoint. But yeah, it makes me more aware of not going overboard.
Sure.
But, confirming that I think it's better than grabbing an energy drink or something like that.
And when I was an athlete, I was having caffeine at the time, consuming caffeine in different ways. And I know when I was in undergrad playing, our coach actually had the caffeine gum in our locker room.
Okay.
He was trying to find any edge we could to be better. And so, obviously I didn't know the ins and outs of it back then, but now understanding that the caffeine gum is so used, and I know it's used like in military situations as well, because it's such a quick release of that caffeine into the system. But I'm sure a lot of athletes or anybody who's performed exercise or anything at all, where if you haven't had your caffeine, especially if you're a habituated caffeine drinker, you can definitely notice when you haven't had it, groggy, slow. So it has definitely, even though I don't consume it now, it's definitely come into play a lot in our lives, and we can really even think back to when these effects were noted, and noticed.
Well, I just have to say congratulations to both of you on your research, on your contributions to the book. Is the book available for purchase?
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a Springer Link book.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is available online.
Is it on Amazon or?
Good question.
Just use the internet.
It's in our library.
Book again is the link between coffee and health, and we're just so thankful that you joined us today. What a fascinating conversation. And for those of you listening, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time here at Walsh University on Cav Chats. Take care. Have a great week.